Suddenly, a voice startled him from behind, asking what he was muttering to himself. Shocked, Seo turned to find Director Kim standing right there, having just burned the letter Kim had sent him a month prior. Director Kim explained that the letter had been delayed, and he had personally traveled to see Seo after discovering something deeply unsettling during the past month. Using his skills to bypass the surrounding suspicious barrier spells, Director Kim began to explain the political backdrop of the realm. He detailed how two major cultivator families existed within the Yun Kingdom, the current imperial Mokli clan and the former ruling Jin clan. He explained that the Mokli clan and the Jin clan had waged war for control over centuries. 100 years ago, the Mokli clan overthrew the Jin clan, who had long ruled the kingdom, and seized the throne for themselves, causing the Jin clan's influence to dwindle drastically. To strike back, the Jin clan recruited commoners and mass-produced them into peak master assassins to target the emperor. When Seo questioned how the Jin clan could possibly mass-produce peak masters like factory products, Director Kim revealed a horrific truth. The Jin clan implanted the vengeful spirits of dead family members into the assassins' bodies, violently drawing out every ounce of their vitality to push their talent to extreme limits. When Seo horrifiedly asked if the Jin clan had slaughtered the assassins' families to harvest their souls, Director Kim corrected him. It was actually the current imperial house, the Mokli clan behind the emperor, who had committed the massacres. For the past 20 to 30 years, the Mokli clan had systematically captured orphans, beggars, and poor farmers to collect their essence blood and innate true chi. They ground these innocent people down to craft a forbidden elixir capable of extending cultivators' lifespans. And to get ingredients for that elixir, they took those no one would miss, captured them, and ground them down to make medicine. Seo is shocked. That's literally cannibalism. Director Kim confirms it. Seo is horrified. Not even rogue sects or demonic cults, these so-called cultivators, are doing this. These scum who claim to cultivate the Tao to ascend to heaven. Seo suddenly felt a wave of nausea. He was disgusted that imperial cultivators would resort to cannibalism. But also, the horrifying realization crushed him. The dying assassin's desperate words years ago were true. The common people were dying by the emperor's direct commands. Seo realized with immense guilt that his entire career in the Shadow Guard had been spent protecting such people and murdering innocent victims with his own hands. Director Kim then shared that while investigating the Mokli clan, the Jin clan had contacted him with an offer to join forces and overthrow the imperial family. Driven by righteous fury against the human-devouring Mokli clan, Director Kim accepted their offer. Those filthy bastards who devour people must not be allowed to live. Such filth should never rule this country. Director Kim gathered like-minded masters from various martial arts sects, arguing that even the Jin clan would be a better alternative on the throne. He urged Seo to join their cause. Overwhelmed by the truth behind the Foundation establishment cultivators who had opposed them in his past life and the horror of his own actions, Seo agreed to join. That very day, Seo abandoned the Imperial Palace, alongside Director Kim, officially joining the rebel forces to fight against the Imperial cultivator families. If you are still watching this video and you have not subscribed to this channel, hit that subscribe button below. I already know you are enjoying this recap, cause why else would you still be here? They arrived at the manor on the outskirts of Seokyung City. Assembled there were the foremost martial luminaries of the Yun Kingdom, each a figure of considerable renown and lethal capability. Looking around, Seo saw the Elders' Council of the 4 Stars and 3 Demons. There were even the venerable elders belonging to the principal orthodox schools of the Yun Kingdom. All of them were peak masters, capable of using the sword silk, and there were over 10 who had reached the level of 3 flowers gather at the summit. If there were no cultivators of the Murim absent, this force could plausibly overturn even the authority of the imperial household. However, the meeting immediately grew tense as accusations flew regarding government ties. An elder voiced his fierce opposition, asking how Director Kim could bring a person from the government, and of all things, someone from the imperial family, another angrily exclaiming that he could not trust anyone from the government. Seo expected this. An extreme measure was needed to compel trust, and a display of defiance began. Shouting out, "Emperor, you insolent WRT!" Seo continued to unleash the fulsome resentment that had accumulated toward the emperor, letting it surge forth wrapped in curses. A torrent of profanity was unleashed. "Curse you! You scoundrel of the highest order! You be starred! "You scoundrel!" Such venomous invective was hurled at the emperor that the surrounding martial elites were forced to intervene to restrain him. Shaken and alarmed, an elder pleaded for him to please desist. He shall accord Seo his faith. Another thought, even if he were a spy, that level of outrage would merit the death sentence. Reflecting back, it seemed a pity that there was still so much more to say. Yet, through that fierce tirade, Seo secured the grudging recognition of those apex cultivators. Thereafter, the gathered set out immediately to smash the stronghold that served as a hub for the demonic path cultivators. Observing the martial artists, an elder of the Jin clan remarked with a smirk, "It seems they may yet be of some use." Examining their attire, Seo was alarmed upon seeing those robes, recognizing them as the very garments worn years ago by the ascetic assassin who had struck into the imperial court. It became clear that the fellow was indeed once a cultivator of the Jin clan's order. Addressing the Jin clan group, Director Kim stated that he had honored their bargain and brought those who sympathized with him, urging everyone to deal with those perfidious ascetic cultivators together. The elder agreed, declaring, "Very well. Let us prepare to depart." As they prepared to move, Seo paused and called out, asking, "Director Kim, where do you intend to go?" Director Kim replied that there was a place they must briefly visit and instructed Seo to follow him. Still curious, Seo pressed again, asking where he was heading. Arriving at a quiet clearing, Director Kim gestured to the ground, explaining that here rested those sacrificed at the hands of the Mokli clan's ascetics. He added that this modest grave contained only the recoverable remains they could gather and inter. Moved, Seo asked softly, if Director Kim buried all these people himself. Director Kim explained that they were in the forest of heavenly deliverance. Their spirits were filled with irreconcilable resentments, twisted into vengeful specters by the Mokli clan ascetics' murder. To guide their souls to rest, he had journeyed to the Jin clan ascetics and learned the rites that deliver wandering spirits so he could guide their souls to rest. He turned to Seo and told him to not forget. The ascetics' ritual arts are not entirely and solely instruments of hatred. What matters is how one chooses to employ them. True cultivation is not merely an obsession with becoming stronger. It is the discipline of never forgetting humanity within any circumstance. Hearing this, Seo remained silent in deep thought. Director Kim decides to help Seo steel his resolve. Some days later, a cultivator proclaims that they would open the passage leading directly into the Mokli clan's territorial domain at once. He performs a ninja hand sign which I could swear I have seen in the anime Naruto before, and in a flash of space, the scenery shifted abruptly, stunning all the martial artists around. Sensing foul air, Seo questioned what that smell was, as the horrific stench of blood and rotting corpses pervaded the entire manor. Throughout the fortress, a guard shouted, "Intruders! The Jin scoundrels have launched an incursion," and immediately, a massive barrier covered the entire manor. Looking up at the massive barrier, one of the invaders gritted his teeth at the Mokli scoundrels, noting that their defensive runic arts were indeed executed with astonishing finesse. Watching a mortal step to the front, an allied cultivator turned to an elder and questioned who this mortal was, asking if they could really trust him since he had been strutting about without their sanction for some time. The elder sternly replied that while he might be immortal, he was different. He admitted that though it might be hard to believe, Director Kim had matched him in combat without being overpowered, using a mere mortal's body. Shock waves reverberated through the onlookers as they gasped in disbelief. Unfazed, Director Kim channeled his Rasengan and compressed it. Seo watched in sheer awe, realizing that what he was witnessing was the realm beyond 5 energies converging to the origin. Director Kim fired the energy ball at the massive enemy barrier, and it exploded and destroyed the barrier. The Jin clan cultivators were left in awe at what this mortal could do all by himself. Even the elder didn't expect that. As the barrier was opened, a huge wave of zombies poured out of the manor to attack the invaders. The elder shouted out a command that echoed across the battlefield to advance, breach their lines, and pierce through the Jiangshi ranks. And just that, a war occurred. Seo skillfully dispatched the zombies near him. The Mokli clan members realized with dread that these people, even among the Murim, were of the highest echelon. Panic spread as orders were given for those of Chi refinement of the 1st and 2nd star to fall back and summon reinforcements to the rear. Seo noted that seeing the familiar Jiangshi and those robes confirmed that the man from his previous life, controlling them, was indeed an ascetic of the Mokli clan. But a strange realization hit him, making him wonder why he could perceive it. It felt extraordinarily strange, as those visible lines represented intent. He pondered whether a Jiangshi, a creature that is already a dead and embittered soul, could possess intention, or if it was simply the intent of the one controlling them. No, he realized it didn't quite feel that way, but if Jiangshi truly had intent, then why couldn't they use sword energy? He then locked his gaze on a specific enemy, realizing that man was the one controlling the Jiangshi. Judging from the magnitude of his divine consciousness imprint, he assessed that the controller was roughly at the chi refinement of the first star. He rushed quickly to corner the controller and managed to slice his forehead. The terrified cultivator shrieked and begged to be spared. Seo grabbed him by his attire like he owed him some money and demanded what the meaning of all this death was. The captive frantically babbled that he would speak and tell everything. Trembling, the captive stammered that this was the primary refinement. When questioned about what primary refinement meant, he explained that after extracting the blood and innate vital energy from mortals, they gathered it into the formation for primary refinement to turn it into origin blood. Those origin blood blocks were then delivered to the clan's elders, who carried them to higher territories where the origin blood was amalgamated and subjected to secondary refinement. He revealed that this process continued through the third, fourth, and fifth refinements, until finally, the origin blood made from the blood and innate vital energy of thousands of mortals was refined into pristine blood. That pristine blood, if used to make pills, could produce the revival pills consumed by the core formation supreme elders. Begging for his life, the captive whimpered, "Great hero, if you will, I shall surrender every origin blood I have refined to you." Origin blood is a clump of powerful energy, so if a great hero like you consumes it, your internal energy will surely increase. Looking down at the groveling cultivator with disgust, the hero replied, "Thank you. Now I can unalive you without further hesitation." Shocked, the captive gasped. In the nick of time, a timely rescue came, and Seo let go of the captive. Seo was stunned to see the High Lord of the Shadow Guards there. The High Lord asks Seo to be quiet and declares that he's not acquainted with traitors of any stripe. The other Shadow Guards join the battle. Please subscribe and leave a like for the video if you are still watching and haven't yet done it. Back to the story. In a tense confrontation amidst a fierce battle, Seo confronts his opponent. He asks the leader if he knows what the current imperial family is doing. The leader is well aware, as the two continue to clash. Seo demands to know how he could serve the imperial family despite knowing what they were doing, asking if that was what a human should do. The leader retorted that before they were human, they were the limbs of His Majesty the Emperor, and limbs do not think, but merely act as commanded. Frustrated, Seo declares that in the eyes of the Emperor, mortals were nothing but livestock. The leader manages to kick Seo back. Seo observes that his opponent's skills had improved, noting that he was standing on the threshold of 3 flowers gather at the summit. The opponent countered by asking if the Jin clan remnants, the former imperial beastards he was working with, were any different, calling them cultivators to whom mortals were merely insects, differing only in degree and scope, and claiming they would grind down the people of Yun Kingdom just the same or even worse. Honestly, bro got a point. Seo expressed his frustration as he was pulled in by the leader's tornado attack. Unable to stop the force, he noticed a strange light that had been appearing for a while. He questioned what the light was. The Shadow Guard leader declared that if neither side was any better, he would not take back his loyalty. He struts his spear at Seo, who recognizes the gang chi and the opponent's intent to kill him in a single strike. Seo decides to respect his resolve and unleashes the Severing Mountain Sword technique, Secluded Valley, to block gang chi. The leader is stunned at the outcome. Seo used that technique since it's the only form he has that can block gang chi despite being unable to control its power. The leader's left arm is completely torn off by Seo, and he coughs out blood, acknowledging that no matter how many times he saw Seo's sword technique, it remained mysterious and unfathomable. Seo humbly called it a swordsmanship too grand for someone like himself, but the opponent, before falling to the ground, questioned how that could be, praising the strike as enlightenment within 3 flowers gather at the summit and the most beautiful form he had ever seen. The opponent reflected on his lifelong pursuit of martial arts to reach that realm, only to realize upon achieving it that it was merely the lowest level of the cultivators. coming to understand that martial arts alone could never surpass cultivators, and expressing regret that their intents differed. After the clash, Seo asks the remaining shadow guards why they hadn't interfered in the fight, noting that had they stepped in, he might be the one lying dead. A subordinate explained that it was the leader's request, as the leader believed Seo would use poisons and hidden weapons if others interfered, so he asked that they test pure martial skill instead. When addressed as Vice Lord, the leader noted it, to which the subordinate replied that once a superior, always a superior, and that loyalty given is forever, asserting that the emperor to whom they once swore loyalty remained their eternal sovereign. Seo expressed regret, apologizing and stating that he might have to kill them today since they too keep their loyalty to the current imperial court. Amidst the chaos of war, Director Kim commands everyone to charge and destroy the refining furnace, while combatants shouted as they fight the demonic SCMS. The Jin clan also uses spells to fight the Mokli clan. A member of the Mokli clan wonders when reinforcements would arrive or where the collateral bastard was. At Seo's side, he snaps the sword of one of the shadow guards. A guard questions why he had chosen such a harsh path using paralysis poison, noting he could have killed them all and subdued them easily without a single wound, asking why he chose to endure the pain instead. Seo spared them because they called him Vice Lord earlier. The guard gasps, and before fainting, he asks Seo if he had reached the 3 flowers gather at the summit, noting that although he saw no red light, Seo had suddenly broken through his harmony with that force. Seo apologizes, explaining he has not reached that realm yet but was beginning to grasp its sensation little by little, having definitely seen a third color, purple, though it did not stay stable. He pondered whether he needed more life and death battles to stabilize it. Suddenly, a newcomer commended the Vice Lord's skill, revealing himself as the Crown Prince of the Mokli clan. Seo asks why the Crown Prince had not intervened if he had been watching. Smirking, the Crown Prince told him not to call him Crown Prince, but then explained that he became Crown Prince because he reached the Chi refining realm 4 stars at a young age, the same level as his father. He mocks Seo, stating that 3 flowers gather at the summit only puts someone roughly at Chi refining realm, 1 to 3 stars, and mocked the idea that someone at 4 stars like himself would even need guards. Seo recognizes the Crown Prince's tremendous strength, admitting that even experts at 3 flowers gather at the summit would have to stake their lives against him, while he himself was barely standing on the edge of that boundary. He realized that fighting him meant certain death, yet felt a smile forming on his lips, accepting that he wouldn't mind dying if he could grasp the thread of enlightenment. Well, of course, you are not scared of dying. You regress every time you do. There is no risk involved for you. Recalling the teaching, if I hear the Tao in the morning, it's fine to die by evening. Recalling a past fight against 50 Chi-building cultivators where he couldn't comprehend the martial art, he realizes he finally understands. As he charged forward, the Crown Prince observed that the Vice Lord was charging at him to die, calling him more of a fool than he thought. Seo uses the record of transcending cultivation and exhausting martial arts, and once in the air he vanished. The combat reached a sudden, baffling pause as the Crown Prince looked around in utter shock, demanding to know where his opponent had vanished to. Seo reflected on the record of martial arts surpassing through cultivation and leaps, the record of transcendent and ultimate martial arts. Though he had memorized the scriptures until now without understanding a single word, rendering the divine art impossible to comprehend, everything changed the moment he witnessed the purple path. He suddenly realized how to grasp the manual. In a contest of martial arts, if the clash of hues represented technique, he understood that one could attack the hue itself. Before setting foot into the 3 Blossoms Crown Peak, the passage made no sense, but now he understood that a hue was one's will, and attacking it meant going beyond exchanging simple blows to severing the opponent's very perception, an extension of their will. This revelation explained the divine skill that had allowed Director Kim to vanish like a phantom. It was a secret technique designed to cut away perception, making the opponent completely unable to recognize him. A martial art that allows a martial artist and a cultivator to become equals if only for a moment. It was a martial art created by man to overcome the heavens. Seo's sword lands on the Crown Prince's barrier closer to his neck. Shocked and bewildered by the sudden disappearance, the Crown Prince demanded to know what kind of petty trick Seo played on him. But Seo wonders if his foe was wrapping his body in a defensive spell. Seo is thrown away like a rag, and he crashes to the ground. Mocking the maneuver as an amusing trick that would never work on a true cultivator like him, the Crown Prince launched a windy counterattack. Observing the oncoming assault, Seo recognizes that he needs to dodge for the time being. Some wind-style shurikens are launched at him, but he manages to survive, and others are devoured by the prince's magic. He questions whether he should approach the cultivator once more using the record of transcendent and ultimate martial arts, but quickly realizes every single wind current flying toward him was a lethal wind blade that would tear him to shreds if he drew near. Even if he managed to slip inside, he would still have to break through the defensive spell the Crown Prince had cast around himself. So long as he remained outside the cultivator's conscious domain and carefully observed his will, dodging remained manageable. However, he knew a martial artist's internal energy was impure compared to a cultivator's spiritual power, meaning a martial artist would tire out far more quickly regardless of their energy reserves. Unable to drag the battle out, he determined he had to end things quickly by ascending to the Three Blossoms Crown Peak right then and there. Noticing the shift in rhythm, the Crown Prince taunted him, asking if he was already exhausted, before unleashing his attack. In response, Seo executed the Severing Mountain Sword technique, sealing the ridge and cut the opponent's attack into two. The Crown Prince was stunned, but the impact also rattled Seo to his core, making the hand holding his sword hurt intensely, yet he knew he had to face the attack head-on without dodging. Another attack was sent his way. He transitioned directly into the Severing Mountain Sword technique, flowing Dragon Sword Dance, and sliced up the attacks again. He kept telling himself not to stop even if his body became a tattered rag. The Crown Prince sneered at his defiance and performed ninja hand signs, shouting in outrage and summoning a massive, monstrous beast made of swirling wind currents. Instinctively, Seo knew that he could neither block nor dodge the oncoming strike, and that he would die the moment it reached him. Yet strangely, he felt no fear or worry. Instead, he endlessly chased the faint purple will, contemplating the deeper meaning of colors. He realized blue represented the will of self-protection extending from himself, while red represented the killing intent extending from the enemy. Purple was where self-protection and killing intent mixed, the overlap between the enemy's will and his own. The monstrous wind attack is headed towards Seo. Up until that point, he had assumed another person's will was unconditionally red, but changing his perspective revealed that from the opponent's point of view, their own will was blue and his was red. They were merely two sides of the same coin, leaving him to wonder if all wills shared the same color. He understood that martial arts could never be perfected alone. One had to connect with the opponent to reach a state where their will mirrored one's own actions. Recognizing this as the true realm of the Three Blossoms Crown Peak, he reflected his consciousness into the Crown Prince's will, realizing how much energy he had previously wasted. He finally grasped why he could never maintain a sword aura for more than a second through raw physical strength and internal energy alone. True martial arts required connecting with both the opponent's will and the will of the world. Channeling this ultimate understanding into a blazing sword aura, he unleashed the fifth form of the Severing Mountain Sword technique. He split the attack and destroyed it. Meanwhile, the members of the Shadow Guard unit watched the battle from where they lay collapsed on the ground, having been paralyzed by Seo's paralysis powder. Everyone among them had already assumed the outcome was a foregone conclusion, viewing the desperate struggle as meaningless since a cultivator existed on a completely different level than a martial artist. But right then, a massive surge of power shook the battlefield. Astonishment filled the eyes of the unit members as they looked on in total disbelief, stammering out that they were witnessing the miraculous arrival of the Three Blossoms Crown Peak. As the air hissed and surging energy rushed forth, all the wasted chi began coming back. Shaken to his core, the young prince stammered in utter disbelief, asking what was happening. A stern voice called out to him, telling his majesty to lock in. Mocking the display, the prince sneered that his opponent had grown stubborn after breaking a single formation, tauntingly questioning how he would handle the next one. He performed a set of ninjutsu hand signs and summoned a massive, swirling tornado of draconic forms that erupted with a deafening roar. Unshaken, he doesn't feel like he's going to die from attacks like that anymore. Seo realizes that after achieving 3 flowers gather at the summit, attacks of that caliber could no longer kill him. Pushing forward, he understood that transcending peak steps and the mountain lord steps were meant to be executed as a single, fluid move. As the attack approaches him, Seo uses a technique known as the mountain lord's transcending peak step, which is like a roaring tiger. He advances towards the crown prince. Seeing him advance, the prince yelled that it was merely another trick, mockingly asking if he truly believed he could pierce through a tornado formed from the culmination of thousands of wind formations. Unsheathing his blade, Seo unleashed the severing mountain swordsmanship ninth technique, landscape painting. Knowing he could deflect the blow, the Crown Prince was stunned when Seo channeled his energy, confident that while he had failed to break the defensive formation in the past, the outcome would be different now that he wielded Sword Gang. The devastating strike shattered the defense. Terrified, the prince screamed in panic and launched a quick attack, but it absolutely did nothing. The Crown Prince pleaded with him not to come any closer, shouting for him to stay away and to F off. He fired a few wind attacks to scare him off, and turns around to try and flee. Determined not to let the prince escape, the warrior lunged forward and delivered a swift, brutal slash. The prince collapsed to the ground, crying out in agony. He yelled at his attacker, calling him a mere martial artist and demanding to know how such a feat was possible. As the warrior walked steadily through the haze, the prince desperately tried to justify his position, shouting whether he thought his own actions were righteous and claiming that what he was doing was no different from the Jin clan. He asked if he really believed the Jin clan's cultivators reached foundation building without consuming pills, reminding him that he too had received a pill from his father years ago and was no different for taking it. Reaching into his garments, the warrior pulled out the untouched pill and crushed it to dust, reassuring the prince not to worry. He declared that there was not a chance in hell he would ever consume anything created by cultivators, before bidding him farewell. In a flash, a sword swung. Suddenly, everything shifted. Seo lost his head. Seo felt a sudden disorienting shock, wondering why his body appeared upside down, only to realize his head had been severed. He recognized that such an attack was completely impossible for a chi-refining cultivator, belonging instead to a realm beyond chi-refining, a power achievable only by a foundation-building cultivator or someone like Director Kim who had surpassed 5 energies converging to the origin. As his life flashed before his eyes, he recalled his journey since his first regression. He thought back to his second regression, remembering how a long time ago, that second life had felt like a mere instant. He remembered teaching Director Kim and how they had overcome cultivators together. He recalled the days filled with hope to defeat cultivators, alongside the days when they witnessed their hope crushed, feeling utterly powerless back then. He remembered the desperation, wishing he were stronger, wishing he had worked harder, wishing he could have reached further. Having finally reached the realm he had dreamed of, he refused to let it end like this. With fierce determination, he told himself that not this time, asserting that he had to cut his opponent down no matter what. Meanwhile, Prince Mokli Hyun gasped for breath, realizing he was still alive. He credited his survival to the artifact given to him by his father, which possessed the one-time ability to strike down an enemy with the power of foundation building. Laughing hysterically, the prince proclaimed victory over the mortal. Seo asks why it was always the cultivators who won. Back then, Director Kim declared that even if foundation-building cultivators eventually die, martial artists could now resist them. Yet, looking over the battlefield, the Mokli clan elder taunted Director Kim, pointing out that while the world's greatest martial artist managed to defeat one cultivator, there remained 50 foundation-building cultivators, as many as the stars in the night sky. Exhausted, the prince cursed as he depleted all his spiritual power. Seo was still having his final moments of this life. He was on the brink of giving up there in his previous life. The overwhelming pressure had once made Seo want to abandon martial arts and return to being a simple soap salesman. But he was different. The Crown Prince is stunned to see something terrifying. Seo remembers that back in his previous life, Director Kim told him to run while he stayed back to stop the cultivators. Suddenly, a bloodied hand gripped the sword. Re-engaging his stance, his headless body faced the Crown Prince. The prince panicked in complete disbelief, screaming in frustration and asking how a mortal could possess such terrifying obsession, demanding to know why he wouldn't give up. Seo once urged his companion not to sacrifice himself or go away. Director Kim turned and smiled at Seo and said, "Seo has always tried his best. He had watched him this entire time and said that he would live to see the sun rise on better days. So just as Director Kim's will was strong to face his enemy, even when his end was inevitable, Seo's headless body moved and slew the Crown Prince. Seo Eun-hyun had trained in martial arts his entire life. His body had suffered for years, and his hand had gripped the sword until it shattered. The martial arts he had refined over a lifetime moved his body even after death to complete his final mission. Prince Mokli Hyun was struck with unbelievable fear right up until the moment of his death. And when Seo's head finally fell onto the ground, he was still smiling. Seo Eun-hyun had spent his entire life refining himself, and now it had ended. A voice echoed, commending the effort and reminding that one's hard work will never betray them, advising to keep the mindset that if one can reach enlightenment in the morning, they can die peacefully in the evening. The message resonated. Never forget that feeling. Your efforts will surely someday bring you a morning that is worthy of your sweat. That was Seo Eun-hyun's 5th regression. Alright guys, this is the end of Season 1. Season 2 comes out in September 2026. Please subscribe to the channel to get the manhwa recap of the season when it drops. Thanks for watching.